everyone, it's Annette Green. Welcome, welcome. It is week, I don't even know, 13, 14. It's in the video title, but it's 2025, and every week I do a craft or craft related video. And I just wonder, are you bright and cheerful, clean and simple, or are you more vintage? So today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the same paper, the same stamp, the same die from my new release, and we're going to make a cheerful, sunny, bright, clean, and simple version of this little ATC pocket, and then we're going to do a vintage version. So let's get right into it. Okay, so what I'm going to use today is K016 ATC Special Kit. ATC Special Die and Stamp Set is what it is, and actually it's 20% off right now on the Elizabeth Craft Designs website. $39.96, great deal. And there's all these dies in here. There's more on the back here, and there's this full stamp set, and then there's two dies over here that I'm going to especially use today to make little pockets. So I know some of you are going to ask right away. I'm just going to address it right now. Where do I get my big envelopes like this and my magnets? This is an 8x10 magnet sheet. I'll link below. I just get it on Amazon. I mount my magnets to just black medium weight chipboard, which I also get on Amazon, or you can get it from Graphic 45. And then these are from scrapbook.com. This is a very large one. I want to say this is 9x12. Yes, and they have all different sizes. And you've probably seen me, if you follow me for a while, you've seen other sizes that I do store my dies in. So now that we have that covered, let's move on. And if you are fairly new to my channel, you may not know it unless you're an Elizabeth Craft Designs fan and you follow me over there. I do have my own release with Elizabeth Craft Designs. I design for them, designed by Annette Green, right there, Elizabeth Craft Designs, paper, dies, and stamps. So we're going to work with some of these today, and we're going to show you that difference between bright and vintage using the same things. So the great thing about the die set and the ATC Special is that you have this wonderful little pocket style, sort of like a little top-loading envelope, and then you have this overlay die that coordinates with it beautifully, and it has a little stitch around the edge. So I'm going to play with that, but what's great about that die is if you especially are an ATC, Artisan Trading Card person, you can use that little pocket in your ATC book like this. So here are some ATCs. I got this one from Tammy in Banff. But there's that little envelope there, and I've just adorned it with a few simple things and some pretty paper. And an ATC card fits perfectly inside of it. So yeah, here's a peek at a couple more. That's another one there. And another one there. So it's pretty handy for ATCs, but you could use it in your junk journal as little fun pockets and really make it vintage and pretty. Or you could put it on a birthday card with a gift card in there, anything you want. It's very versatile. Okay, we're going to start with these two, and these are just remnant pieces here from my Colorful Collective. This is going to be our bright and cheerful version, and then we're going to just use the other side for our vintage version. So I just check very quickly before I start, make sure I've got the grain of the paper going with the score of this die. There's another score here. This one, there's a score. We don't need to worry about that one as much. And so I'm going to cut this out and then die cut it out. And this will be my main pocket piece. And then we will also cut a piece of this bright, cheerful yellow plaid. We don't have to worry about grain on this one. And we'll die cut that. Okay, and we'll just fold on these score lines and burnish them down using a bone folder. Got a little fold here. So if we did not go with the grain of the paper and we tried to fold on that little 1/4 inch flap, that would tend to want to crack a little bit. Now you can always reinforce when you're going against the grain like this one. You can reinforce with some washi tape. I'm just going to try to be really careful. And I don't see any cracking, so I think we're good. Okay, and I'm not going to ink any edges on this bright, cheerful one just to kind of show you the big difference between the two. So that's going to get adhered right in there, but we want to decorate this first before we get this down. So I think it'll be very fun to use my Beetles and Bugs stamp and die combo. This is CSD 402, and there are all the coordinating dies for every single one of these cute stamps in here. So let's pick maybe this fun guy right here. What I always like to do when I especially get a stamp set like this is I just grab some nice smooth white or off-white cardstock that has a little bit of body to it, and I just stamp a whole bunch of these. And so here's our guy right here, and then that way it's easy to color him and then die cut him out. And I always stamp and die cut after. I would stamp first, color first, then die cut. And some of you may like to do it the other direction, but that's the way I like to do it. So because I'm going to be using alcohol markers, I'm going to lay down my little mat here to protect my table and just color away. All right, let's get in here nice and close. I'm going to grab some bright colors, some yellow, some green, and I have pulled up a picture over here on my iPad. This is sort of like a horned beetle. But we're not going to be like super exact to the actual, we're just going to have some fun with it. So I've got a yellow, I've got a green, and maybe a little darker green. So this is YG 2.5, so we will go to YG 8.5. That's my next one up. And the yellow was Y 2.3. And I think that's all we'll need right now. We'll eventually use a little brown on the legs. So, well, I might as well grab it now. Okay. OR37, it's a little bit better. So we'll just have some fun coloring this guy in. Okay, so I'm going to start with my yellow, and where there's a lot of black in here, I'm going to try to avoid touching, like rubbing the alcohol marker right through the black. It doesn't tend to bleed too badly. This is VersaFine. Just VersaFine Onyx Black, and I stamped it yesterday. Not that you have to do it the day before, but I just happened to. It's good and dry, but you still don't want to scrub your marker right over the top of that. So I'm just sort of staying to the outside edges here with my yellow. And this is not a video about how to color with alcohol markers at all. I'm just kind of taking you through it real quick. As I'm putting in color, I'm going to put a little bit of yellow up in here, and maybe some in here and here. So we'll kind of start with that, and we'll see what we have. And we'll add a little bit of green, YG 2.5, and I think we're going to add this to the very outer edge. Grabbed a little bit lighter yellow. This is actually Y 2.2 for this inside part. And you could leave that white, but I just want a little bit of a lighter, brighter yellow in that very center area. So we'll color that in just loosely, all in those inside places. It does not have to be alcohol marker. You could use colored pencils. You could do watercolor paint. You could do water-based markers. It's just whatever you want to do. So I'm going back with that other YO 2.3, and I'm just sort of doing a little blend with that green that we had on the outside edge, so we don't have that hard line. Just kind of soften that up. And I'm trying, to stay within the lines pretty well here. The die cutting is really nice. Puts just a little bit of a halo around everything. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I don't think that I need this darker green after all. I think I'm going to stay very bright. So now I just need to take my OR 3.7 and carefully color in his legs. I did that off camera because I had to have my face really close to that, and I didn't want my head in the camera. Okay, let's grab the die that coordinates with that, and I'll show you how nicely that cuts out. Got my well-loved Anna Griffin Empress Mini magnetic mat here, and I got a few little bits in my die from earlier. I want to pop those out before I start. So here's the die that coordinates with that stamp, that fun horned beetle. And you just, as you would expect, you line everything up. You look through the spaces that you can see through and just get it just so. And this is why I love the magnetic mat, because, usually you have to be a little bit careful because things can shift around on you. But once you get this in place, then you can just carefully put the sandwich on, and it really does hold pretty well. Okay, let's check it out. Yeah, see how nice? It puts that perfect little 1/16 of an inch of white halo around the whole thing. Very cool. So let's see how that's going to look on the front of our little envelope here, our little pocket. Got our yellow, we've got some bright yellow. So we just need a little bit more, I think, on the background here. Okay, I grabbed this pretty piece of paper, also from Colorful Collective, because I wanted to pull in a little bit of that green here. And this was just a scrap. I did not size it yet. So, it's about 1 3/8 inches tall. And then the width will be determined by this. But before I put it down, I've grabbed some Twisted Citron. And see, this is also the difference between, are you going with bright and cheerful, or are you going with vintage? And when I use the whole bright and cheerful method, I tend to ink the papers with the colors of the paper. A lot of people don't do that. They do everything with brown, but I don't even want to get close to having a vintage look on this one. So just really bright and colorful. So this is mustard seed on the yellow. These are just regular distress inks. That was Twisted Citron for the green, and then the blue is Tumbled Glass, because this is a fairly light blue paper from the Colorful Collective. So I'll just hit all those edges, and we can start to get this put together. One more die I want to pull in is my Picture Frames and Mats number 2236. Again, I will link everything below. And don't forget, all my links give you a 10% off discount if you use the links. But if you're shopping for other things, it also applies to everything in your order. And if you ever are shopping in the future on the ECD website and you can't remember, like, to come back and get the code or click on the shop, just use my name, Annette Green, one word. That still does it. Okay, so I've grabbed that Picture Frames and Mats, and I think I want to do some little photo corners here, which I have in this die. And I'm going to use that same blue. And I'm thinking that might be it. We do have these cute little labels, and I'm going to show you some ATCs I made with those little labels and some more bugs. But let me get these cut out first. Okay, there they are. I'm going to ink them just like we did with the other in this same blue. But I was having a thought, because I just love layering. And it just, sometimes I think, am I done? Does it need more? And adding layers always sort of solves that dilemma for me. If you wanted to keep it super simple, you could just put the bug on here with these photo corners and be done with it. But I was looking at that Picture Frames and Mats set as I was getting these die cut, these corners. And I do have this little frame here, which has a coordinating die to cut away the middle if you want to, with just a little bit of an edge, and that fits right there perfectly. And we could see our bug still without covering up too much of that. Now, you could do a solid panel, but I feel like that's too much. That's why I want to do just an open frame like this. So now I just have to decide what paper am I going to use to do that. Just so I'm not using a ton of different papers, I'm going to use that same paper, but instead of having that pattern on the same pattern, I'm going to darken that up a little bit. So I've grabbed Mowed Lawn, and I'm just going to lay some color over those lighter spaces where all that pattern and design is. And then we break up the difference between the two, but we still see the pattern a little bit in the background. This is something you can do with anything that you're working on. When you have a pattern paper that just isn't quite working for you the way you want, just rub some color over the top of it. Okay, so now I'll die cut this little frame out of here. And I'm pretty sure I can do them both at one time. So let me do that. Okay, let's see how this looks. Ooh, so pretty. Okay, we'll save that for something else. Let's see how this is going to look here. So we would have this. We still have to trim this shorter. And we would have this. And then we'd have our little bug. That's kind of interesting. I think we're going to go with that. Okay. The only other option that we would have is to do the blue and darken the blue, which also would look good. I don't know. Let's see. Okay, well, I started to, get another piece of this, but then I remembered the back side of this one also has blue on it, so we can get a quick idea. Now, I think we should put these in place because we're going to have more blue. And there is a little bit of that contrast, but quite honestly, I think it's too much of the blue, especially if we're going to put it on here. So let's flip it back over and use the green. And that's the best way to do it. Just test it out. See, I like that better because I know it's going to be going on here. So now all we have to do is get these things on here. I just wanted to mention that if you are in the Chantilly, Virginia area, I am going to be there in the Elizabeth Craft Designs booth when they do the Scrapbook Expo. I think it's April, it's just in a few weeks. April 24th weekend. I am going to be there working, maybe doing demos or just chatting with people and helping with sales. So if you're in the area and you come to the show, please come over and say, hey, let's take a picture together. All that good stuff. Okay, so at this point we can get this on here and we might as well close this up while we're at it. So I like to do this flap on the outside, but this one, let's see, also on the outside. You know, we could do it. I think it's intended to go on the inside, but I feel like that's going to stop things from going in there. You know, like sliding in there, it's going to get hung up on that little flap. So I think I'm just going to trim off a little hair, like a 16th, so that it can come around the back with that one. So I'll glue that up. You could use some clips if you want to hold that, but I think that's going to be good. Or you could put a weight on there. Do that while I clean up a little bit. Okay, then we can get this on next. Our little frame, you can kind of center that a little bit, top and bottom. And then our photo corners. Okay, pop this last one. I'm just coming in a little bit with these, just so we still see that yellow. Looks cute. And then I think we'll pop him up with a little foam tape. I tend to use a lot of foam tape just because, I mean, I know you can put just one piece on the back, but I like it when it's a little more sturdy feeling and not, you know, when it's on something it doesn't give. So I've cut these skinny little pieces, but you do you. So there, I think we'll put him right in the middle. Yep. I was going to move it, but did you see that? I can't move it. Okay. Okay, isn't that cute? So, I mean, that would be great. Like I said, if you had, here's a card that I made, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment because I'm going to show this. on a Facebook Live coming up, but this would be great to add to the inside of a card that you already have the bug theme going. And you could put a gift card inside of here, or if you have a really cheerful planner page or a junk journal that you do a lot of bright colors in, you could put that on there. But let's make another one, pretty much the same layout, mostly the same papers and the same stamp and die, but give it a whole different feel and a vintagey look. So like I said, same papers. This is going to be our little envelope, our little pocket. And I was going to use this side, but I have decided on this side because I want this to be my band on this one. So this time I'm going to ink my edges with Vintage Photo, because that's an instant way to get your vintage look, of course. Inked all those edges, looks good, but we see this like sky blue here, so I don't care for that for my vintage looking one. So I'm just going to get in there with some brown, and just in case we see along those outer edges, I'll just sweep it out a little bit, and then that way we have this look instead. That's much better. And then we've got this piece. Now this is a pretty sunny bright yellow, so we're really gonna hit this with the Vintage Photo as well. And we're going to do a little bit more than that. So let's take our Vintage Photo and just mush it right here on my mat. Get a bunch of water on that. And then get us a little splatter brush. And let's start putting some splatters in mostly the places that we're going to see. You know, we're going to have that band go across the top, so let's do a little of that. Actually, we're doing a lot, so do it to your desired amount. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to let that dry. When that dries, we're going to cut this. What was it, 1 3/8? So just shave a little bit off of here. And the width was about 2 9/16, so that's a half and another 16. Okay. Of course, we'll want to ink this as well. So toward the end of the video, I'll show you that card again that I showed you a moment ago and talk about the live that I'm going to do. It's not going to be on the Elizabeth Craft Designs page this time. It's going to be for Creative Scrapbooker magazine on Tuesday. So those of you who are used to seeing me do lives for Elizabeth Craft Designs, it's going to be a little different this time. Same time, 2 p.m. my time, Eastern Standard, but over on the Creative Scrapbooker Facebook page. Creative Scrapbooker magazine Facebook page. So if you're not a member, or not even a member, it's not a private group, it's a public page. If you're not following them, you might want to give them a follow before Tuesday, and then that way you may get the notification when I go live over there. Okay, we got that ready. That's still drying. We've got that. We can go ahead and color our beetle. I'm going to do my photo corners in this brown cardstock. I just had a scrap over there. So we'll get those cut out, and I might possibly use the same for the frame. We'll see. For now, we'll just do this. Okay, getting my little brown photo corners on here. I'm going to try that frame thing. We're going to test out 2 different colors again, just like before. I cut one out of the brown cardstock, but also out of the red. And if we make it a little darker, like we did before with the other one, I think that might be a good choice. But it will all depend on laying our little beetle in place first, because the beetle is kind of burgundy-ish compared to the rest of what's going on here. And I did die cut the beetle off camera just a moment ago. And we're going to talk about that white edge, because we're not leaving that like that. This is vintage, so we're going to change that to go with the feel of this whole thing. Okay, so there's that. And let's pretend, I mean, the brown is nice for sure, but if we did this, but made it a little more red and brown. So do I even have any red ink on my red dauber? Sure do. So we'll make this a little bit darker. This is that same pattern paper as the actual pocket itself. And then we will take our vintage photo, hit those outer edges, really give it that vintage feel. And I also like to go on the inside, just quick. I don't worry about it too much. All right, you may have seen off to the side when I was working on the little pocket that I had a burgundy colored beetle and I didn't like it at all. So I started over, and rather than showing you me coloring it all over again, I'll just show you this finished one. And I just used the following colors: YO 2.3, YO 2.5, the warm gray 5, and the warm gray 7 to do all the coloring. And now all I want to do is get rid of all this white edge here. So I'm going to pick a color to go in and color in all that white. So for this one, I went around and covered up that white with, that's an O as in orange, 7.3 orange, believe it or not, but it is. So you can see I got rid of that white edge. That looks so much better and very, very different than our original bright and cheerful version. But those of us that really like the vintage, there you go. So it just depends on what your preferences are. Just to do a little share of some other things, here are some fun ATC cards that I made with the same set. This is more with watercolor on the bugs, and I added all kinds of things from my collection here, of course, and then of course I put my artisan trading card stamp on the back, so that I am ready to trade these at any given moment. These are very vintage, very natural, neutral kind of images. And then I have these two fun ones that I'll be kind of recreating, but with some different papers and colors in the Creative Scrapbooker magazine Facebook Live next Tuesday. So I hope you can join me for that. I got my fun little frog here. We're gonna decorate the inside quite differently than this one, and then this one we will use a little bit different colors and techniques, but the same basic concept, and this easy and fun little pop-up inside with all this wonderful stuff going on. So I hope you can join me for that. So there we go. We've got our two different versions. We got all kinds of samples here with the fun Beetles and Bugs stamp and die combo, and my new Sunny Days release with Elizabeth Craft Designs. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you join me again next week in the next crafty video. Thank you so much for watching.